Hey, Sanctuary Framily. Good evening, morning, afternoon, whenever the time of day is that you happen to be watching this. My name is Micah Morgan, if I haven't had an opportunity to chat with you before, and I'm coming to you today with our Communitas devotional reflection. It's going to be based on our most recent sermon from June 19th, where Pastor preached on the simple title, We're Forgiven. We're Forgiven. And this is a continuation of our sermon series that we've been working through on the Apostles' Creed, called That We Might Believe. I remember sitting and listening to Pastor Rich preach this sermon, and I had this really familiar experience, and you might have had something similar happen to you, where you're kind of sitting and listening to a family member or a friend tell you a story that you've heard a million times before. And they mention a detail that you knew like somewhere in the back of your head, but it was almost like you were remembering it for the first time after they mentioned it to you. That was kind of like what I experienced when I was listening to Pastor preach on being forgiven. It was like I had heard this story about our relationship with God and God's love for humanity and for creation over and over and over again. But the detail of my forgiveness had kind of faded into the background. And so when I heard Pastor remind us of this and the details around being forgiven, right? That if we come to the Lord and we confess our sins, God is faithful to forgive us. It was almost like I was remembering it, like, oh, I am forgiven. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of us kind of walk through life forgetting that we're forgiven because there's so little about our world that allows us to feel forgiven. I mean, after all, we live in a society that's really bent on labeling things and kind of freezing them into place with those labels, right? In our medical field, in our legal system, even in our education system, we're constantly trying to put labels on things, and it's really hard to get those labels changed. And so I know for myself, when I fail to love someone the way that they deserve to be loved, or when I fail to love myself the way that I should be loved as someone who bears the image of God, I almost feel frozen in place, like that label can't be taken away. And I really do think that the constant reminder of our forgiveness, of being in relationship with a God who went to the ends of the earth to make sure that the consequences of sin wouldn't keep us locked in bondage, when we're reminded of that, it feels like those labels aren't permanent anymore. It feels like we can overcome those labels, that we're not just frozen in place by what we call ourselves and what the world calls us. So my hope is that this video will continue and echo in what Pastor Rich gave us this Sunday, which is the incredibly important reminder that because we're in relationship with Jesus, we are forgiven. And so the shame that comes with being frozen in place by these labels, that goes away. So what are you going to do with this reminder? What will you do with the reminder that you're forgiven? Bless you.